8 effective steps for leftists to deal with the Trump presidency. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I should make it abundantly clear that I still define as technically left-wing and did not vote for Trump, though I was actively against Hillary Clinton since the primaries. I consider myself alt-left as opposed to the identity politic obsessed crony capitalist regressive left that ended up seeming to take over almost the entirety of the Democratic Party. I want to offer a piece of wisdom that my Clinton supporting mother, who is a former politician, had to offer about what I should do personally if Clinton were to be elected. She said that she believes Clinton will be a good president if we as citizens make her into a good president, or would have been a good president. She sincerely thought Clinton was going to win. That said, I think it is completely immature and unproductive to think anything less of Trump. So I want to offer some tips about how to potentially make Trump be a good president. Granted, I assume that most left-leaning people have absolutely no idea of how to even begin going about helping Trump be a better president, so most of these won't be ideas for direct action. You see, in order to take action, one must first prepare our minds in regards to what the most effective actions to take truly are. Let's begin. The first thing to do if you are left-leaning and opposed Trump is to accept that you've lost this round. Stop the whining, denial, violence, and bullying. It will not get you anywhere to destroy property, beat people up, gang up on people on the internet, or even just carry a sign that says, "Not my president." Donald Trump will be your president in 2017, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start being an effective advocate for the changes you want to see during his presidency or the things in government you want to protect. When you forward around petitions to stop Trump from entering office, you make it abundantly clear that you are unwilling to compromise your beliefs in any way or accept the way our democracy actually works. When you do that, you will further validate the views that your political and philosophical opponents have of you. They will think that you are an idiot, and they will not care what people like you have to say, even when you do make good points. It discredits you. If you want to be an effective advocate for anything, make sure not to discredit yourselves with delusions that you can overturn this election with collective tantrums. Step number 2 is super simple. Start unblocking people on social media, in particular your friends and family that you blocked because of political arguments or because you decided within the past year that maybe they are bigots, even though you never thought so beforehand. You see, they're probably not racist and sexist just because they didn't like Hillary Clinton or why ever you blocked them. You see, we're all in the same boat. And now your supposedly racist uncle believes his captain is steering our ship. So you might want to hear what your uncle has to say about his captain because he knows him better than you do. I know firsthand how excessively trigger-happy the left has gotten in terms of blocking people on social media because I lost probably hundreds of friends on Facebook during this election for very silly reasons and was called a bigot myself repeatedly as I was a Sanders supporter. However, that makes sense. Oh god. If you are left-leaning and you cannot fathom how Trump got elected, why don't you start unblocking those supposedly racist family members and start asking how they feel, why they voted, all the things that you didn't hear from them over the past 6 months since you had them blocked. You might be surprised by how much you might learn about what really went on when you start talking to these people. It's your turn to shut up and listen. Step number 3, and I cannot emphasize this one enough, is to stop taking mainstream leftist media like CNN, MSNBC, and the New York Times seriously. Or even blogs like the Huffington Post, Mike, The Guardian, Slate, and definitely stop taking seriously any feminist blog. I'll put it simply. All of these sources were completely and utterly convinced that Clinton would win by one of the biggest landslides in American history. And yet they were not just wrong about the landslide part, but they were wrong entirely, and she actually lost. So obviously that should be a red flag about these sources' credibility. And yet still, I scroll through my Facebook friend list and see article after article shared from these exact sources that were wrong about this election so blatantly. They're stating all sorts of crazy things in an obvious effort to come up with a believable explanation about why they were wrong, which still fits the narrative that they had been spewing the entire time, instead of just saying, oops, obviously we were wrong. It's madness, so it's time to unplug from this media. Doing anything else than treating these sources like Fox News after Obama was elected does you and everybody you know a disservice. Milo Yiannopoulos tells the truth when he says that leftist media lies to you and they lie about you. And speaking of Milo Yiannopoulos, step 4 will be to start actually investigating right-wing media and pundits and see what they really have to say about themselves, as opposed to what leftist media says about them. Look into that Bannon guy from Breitbart and see what he actually has to say. He's actually not an anti-Semite. I know you might have heard that from like 5 million sources, but he employed Ben Shapiro for like 10 years. Ben Shapiro is an Orthodox Jew who wears, the little Jewish person hat around everywhere. I forget what it's called. I don't want people to just read one Breitbart article that all your friends are forwarding around, because it's definitely true that Breitbart posts some very inflammatory articles, though they do get their facts right pretty well. But, they grew in popularity and circulation by offering a very direct counter-narrative to the regressive left's fourth-wave intersectional feminist social justice narrative. They got popular by being kind of clickbaity in the exact opposite way that sites like Mike.com and Gawker and Everyday Feminism were clickbaity. Only Breitbart actually was a little bit more factual, even though they were very slanted. But more so. Why don't you actually sit through the entirety of a few Milo Yiannopoulos lectures or debates and see if you don't actually agree with much or even most of what he has to say? Because although there are several things that I disagree with him about, he's actually right about most things. So is Paul Joseph Watson. And even Alex Jones and Ben Shapiro make a lot of valid points, as much as I never thought I would be saying this, which is precisely why Trump won. These pundits of the right that you wrote off as lunatics, that you didn't think that you needed to take seriously, beat you. So start getting to know your enemy and see how much more you have in common with them than you thought. More so, the 5th step is to start investigating more centrist media. Start checking out channels like Sargon of Akkad, Secular Talk, The Rubin Report, Samizdat Broadcasts, Nicholas Gorath, and even some of the less centrist and more left-leaning but non-regressive channels like David Pakman, Sam Harris's podcasts, and Jimmy Dore. Start paying attention to what these people and their guests have to say about, say, Islam extremism and Islam in general, and you might learn a few things. With all the channels I recommended above, you'll never have to watch the Young Turks again. Step 6 should be obvious, which is to actually really educate yourself on specific issues like the Keystone Pipeline, Medicare that Paul Ryan apparently wants to get rid of, and the wall Trump supposedly wants to build, etc. And when you educate yourself, make sure you're getting it from a good source and fact check the hell out of it, because leftist media lies. Look into these issues from some of the more centrist and alternative left sources that I mentioned, and yes, YouTube is basically the best source for news at the moment if you haven't figured it out. And if you can't just take my word for it, I have no time for you, because I could go on for 20 minutes about why YouTube is where it's at. Once you educate yourself about the specifics, start figuring out what you can do in terms of writing your state representatives and various other things. Step 7. Learn about the men's movement and other critics of feminism. This one is a big important one, as I truly believe it is one of the main reasons that Trump won. You see, it turns out that feminism became a gigantic self-serving and destructive ideology, as well as an industry that ended up being used for political ends, and yet it failed in its agenda of getting Clinton elected. Look into people like Christina Hoff Sommers, Camille Paglia, and Janice Fiamengo if you want to hear from people who are or were once full-blown self-identified feminists who now critique feminism. And then, after that, look into people like Karen Strawn and the Honey Badger Radio Brigade for some more men's rights-oriented stuff. Don't just listen to what feminists say about MRAs, because feminists basically always lie every time they talk about the men's movement. Finally, learn about Gamergate, because if there was one mistake feminists really made, it was attacking the gaming industry and trying to push their ideology onto the gamers. In brief, Gamergate is what happened when feminists attacked video games and their fans, and then the gamers fought back against almost insurmountable media bias that falsely represented them and their arguments in order to paint feminists like Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn in a positive light, when they actually are heinous, lying women. But the gamers kept fighting, and eventually they won. The 3 videos that should get you started in terms of Gamergate would be how Anita Sarkeesian spent $1 million by Thunderfoot, Social Justice Harassers by Sargon of Akkad, and Who is Harassing Anita Sarkeesian, also by Sargon of Akkad. Once you realize how batshit insane the Gamergate controversy really was, and how the Gamergate people were actually so blatantly right and the feminists so obviously wrong, you'll start to realize exactly why countless video game fans took a break from playing Halo and Fallout for a while in favor of making anti-feminist YouTube videos. And this whole election will make a lot more sense to you once you realize this whole gigantic cultural happening that you probably didn't pay attention to unless you play games. Video games are the biggest profit industry in terms of entertainment right now. So unless you play games, you're missing out on a gigantic pool of culture. Step number 8 is easy. Stop being openly and flagrantly racist against white people. You don't have to say nasty things about white people. It's not that hard. And it's clearly been an ineffective strategy. It's not that there was a giant pool of white supremacists waiting for Trump to come along so they could vote for a racist, because the numbers just don't match up. More white people voted for Obama than voted for either Trump or Clinton. And many people who voted for Obama twice actually voted for Trump. So obviously something different happened. I am not denying that there isn't a probably growing white nationalist element of the alt-right which might become mainstream. I've seen these people. There are some white nationalist and full-blown racist type people. So knowing that they're already out there, here's how to stop that from growing. Instead of going on and on about how awful white people are, just cut it out. Stop being racist against white people, and the white national movement will stop growing. It's seriously all you have to do. All right, do all of this stuff at the very least to prepare yourself, and then we'll see together what Trump actually does as president. And if he tries to do the stuff we don't like that he's been talking about, we can work more effectively together to stop it. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.